G'day, I'm Adam David Collins, the author of Jewel of the Stars, and today I've driven over an hour and a half to go to another city so I can watch the movie Occupation Rainfall at the cinema. Not showing back in Launceston. I really enjoyed the first movie, and you can see my review of that. I'll put a link in the description below. So, let's go find a parking spot near the cinema and check out Occupation Rainfall. I'll see you after it.
Well, it's a hot one today. I really got to get air conditioning in my spaceship. Anyway, let's talk about Occupation Rainfall. The first Occupation movie was great and I really enjoyed it, but it still had very much the feeling of an indie movie. Occupation Rainfall, on the other hand, feels very much like a Hollywood blockbuster. It is such a step up. It's a whole new level for Australian cinema, and especially Australian sci-fi, which is almost non-existent. The movie had a largely serious tone. There were some humorous elements, which happened kind of later in the movie, but they were timed so that they didn't really diffuse the tension or stifle the drama, despite getting almost slapstick at times. But again, it all kind of came out of the characters, which is the kind of humour that I like. Occupation Rainfall was emotionally and thematically deep and morally complex. Basically, everything that I look for in a movie. The visuals were really impressive. Lots of more spaceships and explosions. Now, in the first movie, they used a lot of tricks to make up for the lack of budget, where you wouldn't necessarily see the spaceship, but you'd see an explosion on the ground and a few bolts of laser flying around. But in this, you saw the spaceships, you saw fleets of ships in orbit of Earth. It was much more visually spectacular than the first movie. And the creature designs, they were also a big step up. I commented in my review of the first movie that the alien makeup, it wasn't the most impressive alien makeup I'd seen. In this one, the same basic design of the aliens is used, but the effects are greatly improved. It's still a practical makeup effect, but I think there's some CGI enhancement going on there as well. And we saw more than just that one race of aliens. We saw multiple species of aliens in this movie, showing that these invaders, they've come from more than one world, more than one race. It's likely that they've actually conquered other people and kind of brought them along with them. And the music was great. Just very, very cinematic soundtrack to this film. And all over this, it's set against the backdrop of beautiful Australian vistas. You get to see the blue mountains. You get to go out into the bush, and it's just great stuff. I love it. It was just so special to see a story like this playing out in such a familiar setting. We just don't get to see that. Now, aliens always attack America. So it's just so cool to see them finally coming here and attacking us for once. Good on yous. Now, in terms of the characters and the cast, I was disappointed to notice that the character of Amelia had been recast, because I really liked the actor who played her in the first movie. However, Jet Tranter did an amazing job rising to the challenge. Her character was the real thematic core of the film, and she managed to carry that well. So, yeah, although I kind of missed that first actor, she did a great job of stepping in. It can't be easy to play a character that someone else has already played, and you've got things against you already because people are going to react the way I did. It's like, that's not the right person. The stakes and scope are much higher this time, and this is fitting. Back in the first film, there was this scene. It was kind of like a horror sequence in a house, and there was a single alien moving through the house creepily while the characters all hid behind mattresses and tables. But you've got to remember that these were ordinary people. In this movie, we get the full horrors of war, and that makes sense because these are now hardened soldiers. These characters wouldn't have been afraid of that one alien in that house. But back then, they were different people. Dan Ewing returns and is once again great as the quintessential tough Aussie bloke. He and many others are really struggling with this alliance between the humans and the aliens that have agreed to join our side and help us. Lawrence McCaw is great as the alien that is referred to as Gary. He has so much patience with the prejudice of the humans that are around him. He's a great character. I really liked him. David Roberts and Daniel Gillies are both fantastic as very different kinds of military leaders. I love both of their performances in this movie. I'm naming a few names, but all of the cast were great. Like, absolutely everyone in this film, I really liked all the performances, all the actors. And I love how all of these characters have grown so much since the first movie. It's good to see. The story follows two main plot threads. In the first of these, Matt and Gary go on a search for the mysterious rainfall. What is it? They need to find out. And this search takes them to Pine Gap, which is kind of known as the Area 51 of Australia. It's a real-life American base in the middle of Australia. And most Aussies don't really know what goes on in there. Only the Americans know. Probably the Prime Minister. Who knows? Here, they encounter an American representative, played by Ken Jeong, and a very Earth-adjusted alien, played by Jason Isaacs. And most of the humour come from these two characters. And they play it well. I mean, Ken Jeong is a comedic actor, and he's really in his element here with the kind of character that he's playing. He's a real kind of out of his depth kind of guy, but he's American, so he's got a lot of confidence in himself, and yeah, it is pretty funny. In the other plot thread, we follow the survivors of Sydney to a military base in the Blue Mountains, and there they find themselves struggling with the ethics of war. What kind of actions are justifiable in war? And what about when the survival of the species itself is at stake? Does that change? And in what way? How does it change? How far do you go? There's a lot of disagreement over this issue amongst these characters, and it leads to some massive conflict. I eat this stuff up. This is really cool. It's awesome. I loved it. The character of Amelia was the one who first initiated peace with the aliens at the very end of the first movie. And this is a very important aspect of this movie. Now, in all of this conflict, I tend to side with Amelia, but I can see how a reasonable person could believe in the opposing viewpoint. It's a morally complex situation. Amelia's point is something that she made this point in the first movie when she says to Matt, Captain Cook found Australia and it was never the same. Columbus found America and it was never the same. These aliens are here. Our world has changed. These aliens are not going anywhere. Earth is never going to be what it was before. It has changed for good, forever. And we have to accept that. Now, what that means is a full military victory is not going to be possible. The only hope for the survival and the future of the human race is going to be found through cooperation. So that is what Amelia passionately believes. And that is why she's fighting so hard for peace, for respect towards the aliens who have joined our side. However, on the opposing viewpoint, maybe these people actually do have a way where we could truly win militarily, but at a great moral cost. It's cool because the human villain in this story is a very deeply developed character, and that's my favourite kind of villain. I really like him. Reminds me a lot of Zod in Man of Steel. So I think that as a nation, we now have a truly Australian science fiction franchise. And then, I can't tell you how exciting that is, just how cool that is. I really want this movie to do well, because I really want a third movie. This is not the end of the story. Now, I will mention that there's quite a bit of language in this movie. In fact, there's fairly frequent coarse language. Now, in the first Occupation, I felt that the language was it felt tacked on, like it didn't really belong, that, they were just trying to be edgy and they put it in, and actually, it felt really glaring and out of place the way it was used in that movie. In this movie, not so much. It feels much more natural. The stuff the characters are going through, the situations they're describing, the language they're using, the swear words, it does feel a lot more natural and, logical. But it very much is an adult movie. So I loved Occupation Rainfall, and I heartily recommend it. Australian cinema has leveled up once again. This is fantastic. Luke Sparke, you, sir, are a true artist. You have created a masterpiece. I think this is only his third film. There was the Billabong one, and then there was Occupation, and now Occupation Rainfall. And if you just look at those three movies, you just see how just the way it improves from one to another. Like, this guy is a real up-and-coming filmmaker. I can't wait to see what he's going to do next after this, because, yeah, he has done so much for Australian cinema. And so much for Australian geekdom. So I can't really say much more about it other than I loved this movie. I thought it was really fantastic, and I encourage you to check it out. It is nationwide. In certain parts of Australia, you may have to travel a bit to go see it. Like here in Tassie, it's only showing in 2 cities, Hobart and Burnie. So I had to drive over an hour and a half just to go see this movie. It took my entire Saturday to see this film, but it was totally worth it, and I have no regrets. I'm really glad that I went to see it while I could. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Live long and prosper. Make it so.